Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. What an interesting day today was in the email box. I'm not sure what happened. Not sure where all this is coming from, but a lot of anti-vax, a lot of anti-mask, a lot of the trucker convoy stuff must have hit a nerve somewhere over the last couple of days, where the loony birds are flying, well, at low altitude. And it came out in the box today, and there was a bunch of stuff that, there seemed to be a common thread. So it seems, I'm thinking it was organized because, look, this is what they do. They find a particular subject and they all hit their talking points. And look, the right does this masterfully. And, because I talked about the trucker convoy a little bit the other day, of which, I'm saying, look, at the end of the day, okay, you're against the mandates, fine. You've had your voice, you've done that. You're the minority up there. They're going to deal with it. They're going to figure it out. They're doing their protest, and what will come out of that will come. However, the Canadian government's going to deal with that. That's what I said. I believe in the right to protest. If you're not happy with your government, you have the right to redress of your grievances. You don't, however, have the right to do the other things. The destruction of stuff, the harassment, that stuff, that problematic, and stuff that the right would be losing their mind over. And in fact, there are states across this country that when the Black Lives Matter protests were going on and people were blocking highways, they were like, we should just run them down. And I said at the time, I'm not in favor of blocking highways. I'm not in favor of doing that because of the public safety part of this. And I think people should be able to get to and from where they're going. But they've actually passed laws that, if you can run people over now, because that's the fetish on the right. It's their freedom. And that was the common theme again today. And what I find interesting about people who talk about freedom is how little they understand what it actually is. The louder they speak, the more times they say it, the less they actually get it. What they're talking about is their freedom. Their freedom to do whatever they want, to whoever they want, however they want, whenever they want, wherever they want. And nobody else has any other right. And this is part of this. In watching the Fox News crowd jump on board of the trucker convoy, who these people don't give a tinker's damn about, other than ideologically, they're doing something we like, which is tearing down, quote unquote, liberal government and going after those liberal tiers. Understand, these are the people who were, these are the people who were saying, those protests that were blocking stuff, horrible, they should all be executed. You remember. Now it's all about freedom. And, my mind goes, and this is what I responded to most people. I thought it was about the vaccine mandate. How did it morph into this illegitimate right-wing spawn? And I'll tell you how. Money. I'll tell you how, organized right-wing, radical, crazy groups like we have here, and lots of them. And, of course, money from here. Pushing their agenda. They don't care about those truckers. They don't care anything about them. What they care about is tearing down government. They care about dividing people. And, I had one guy email me going, it's all a failure. Everything's a failure. He actually said, we're the only country in the world that did lockdowns and we failed at it. And I don't know where you go with that level of stupid. I'm struggling with that. And if anyone's got any ideas, I'd love to hear it. 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Because I'm struggling with that level of, did you not pay attention? The entire globe was shut down for a period of time. And did you not pay attention to when that happened? Of course not. Because the number one talking point in every email that I got is everything is Joe Biden's fault. Everything. Everything that's been done, Joe Biden's fault. Everything. Joe Biden's fault. From the lockdowns to the mask requirements to, us not finding out where the virus actually came from, just a whole litany of, to inflation, to the supply chain, bottlenecks, all of this stuff, all Joe Biden's fault. And, that's the simplistic kind of thinking that you get from some people. And understand, the former guy is the one who dropped the ball right from the start. The former guy is the one who did the lockdowns. You're kind of hoping you remember that. And a number of states' governors did too. So to say it's all Joe Biden's fault is just dishonest. But the threads that were in there, and again, everything that happened last year was all Joe's making. Everything. It's all his fault. Never mind, like I said, the former guy mishandled everything. And did the CDC make mistakes? Absolutely. Abso-freaking-lutely. And we should be looking at that. But in the science world, trial and error is something that you do. The best information we had is the direction they went. Did they drop the ball from the beginning and say, and for whatever reason, no, we don't need masks? Yeah, that was stupid. Everybody admits that. But you listen to the right in these talking points that have come out. And it's all of this was a nefarious plot to take away your freedom. And again, it's to get your guttural mind thinking that you're constantly under attack from every direction. This is the only level these folks can play on, because policy-wise, they've got nothing. They're not going to help make anyone's life better. They're not going to help make our society any better. It's about fearing you into voting for them because, oh my gosh, they're going to come, someone's going to take my freedom. Which, sorry, not happening. And understand, over the next couple of weeks, months, as we move through the next phase of coming out of the pandemic, because as Anthony Fauci said, the full-blown pandemic phase we're exiting out of that. We're hopefully getting out of that, and that's a good thing, especially as states are doing away with this. But to these folks who reached out, masks did nothing and lockdowns were tyrannical. And to say that masks do nothing is, again, one of those political things that it depends on where your minds are, what information you're looking for, because there are studies out there that say, yeah, so masks work, especially the good ones. Grabbing a piece of cloth and putting a piece of cloth over your face, probably not such a great protector. And there are studies out there that say, no, it's worthless. But interestingly enough, it comes down to which side of the issue do you fall on? Where's your ideology? Where's your position? Because we can find studies to confirm any idiocy these days. Because there's always somebody out there with the sole purpose of starting from the end and working their way backward. Which is what a lot of these anti-maskers do. A lot of these anti-vaxxers do. And the reality is, are masks the end-all, be-all savior? No. And it never was supposed to be. It was never claimed to be. And this is the thing that I find most interesting about my right-wing extremist friends, my black and white thinker friends. There are no absolutes in this. This is not an if-then situation. This is if and then and then and then. We do what we can. Masks drop down the number of particulates in the air. Maybe we breathe less of it in. Maybe it spreads less quickly. Is it a nuisance? Yeah, absolutely. But does it work? Yeah, well, according to the Mayo Clinic, yeah. Helps cut down on the particles in the air. Helps make sure that it's along with vaccines and along with social distancing and along with other things, washing your hands, doing all that stuff, the stuff we knew at the beginning, the common sense stuff, it works. It's part of the plan. Now, what happens when you got a bunch of nitwits who go, no, we're not going to do that. I have the right to do whatever I want. And remember those idiots at the beginning who were going into supermarkets and licking fruit? You remember those people, the people who were licking the handles of the of the doors at the freezer section. Do you remember those people? Do you remember those lunatics? This is what we have to deal with as a society. The people who, no matter what common sense says, they're going to do the exact opposite. And then they've got an entire industry goading them along. Yeah, go on. It's all a hoax. Yeah, go out there and lick that fruit in those handles. Go out and breathe on someone in an airplane. Because it's your right. It's your freedom. And you go, what about my rights? Look, I wear a mask out of respect for others. I'm vaccinated. I'm boosted. I'm in good shape. Think I'm not going to have too much of a problem if in the event that I get it. And the data bears that out. If you're vaccinated, you're boosted, you're probably going to be okay. Might get sick, might not feel great for a couple of days, but ultimately probably not going to be on a ventilator and dying. And I think we just lived through part of that. So there's part of me that goes, maybe as we tap down on some of the divisiveness, get away from the politics of this, people will then go, wait a second, since it's no longer a political statement, since no longer it's a violation of my ideology to protect myself, maybe, just maybe, they'll go and get the vaccine. And, it's crazy that we're in this place, but there's a whole group of people out there who are cheerleading the dim forward. And every one of these emails I got, it was all a hoax. It's all a hoax. And now they're pointing to the Johns Hopkins study we talked about last week. Now understand, that Johns Hopkins study was the economics department study, not the healthcare side. Now these people are saying, well, the doctors at Johns Hopkins. No. These were economists who were looking at political economy situations. This was not healthcare. But that doesn't matter because facts don't matter. It says it's bad, so it's automatically bad. And this is kind of the world we're in. But it gets worse. Outside of it's all Joe Biden's fault, outside of it's all just a big hoax, outside of none of the things that we did, even though the rest of the world was doing it too, none of that worked. Outside of those three main talking points, the big one of, we're going to make you pay. We're not going to forget that you promoted wearing masks and you promoted washing people's hands and you promoted people getting vaccines that saved their lives. And vaccines do work. One of the things I do give Trump credit for, he did allocate the money so that corporate America could go out there and get us a vaccine that they can profit from. I would argue that we should be, negotiating for drug prices, but hey, we're Americans. And the very people who say that vaccines don't work and then yell at how bad we're being gouged by the pharmaceutical industry are the very people who are out there saying, well, no, we're Americans. We shouldn't have to negotiate for drug prices. We should pay full price, damn it. Yeah, it's them. But the fourth point, and the most dangerous, is we're going to make you pay. If I see you with a mask, I'm going to mock and harass you. If I see a restaurant that's asking their patrons to wear a mask, or a business to ask their patrons to wear a mask, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to raise Cain. I'm not taking this anymore. I'm going to go and speak my mind. And look, these again are the people who know the least about these topics, but yet are the loudest and the most dangerous. These are the ones who go into a Dollar General store and when asked to wear a mask, come back and shoot the security guard in the head. These are the people who spit in the cashier's face at the grocery store because they're saying, hey, maybe wear the mask like everybody else. I know. Sheep. No. Decent. What happened to common decency? What happened to humanity? It's like these people never had parents, or at least parents who were worth anything. I still think of my mother, and if I was disrespectful to someone, there was a slap upside the back of the head coming. There's a lot of slaps upside the back of the head that should be coming. Now, outside of the individual, the crazy people out on the streets, we're going to have the legislative part of this. And as we speak, there are legislators across the country who are looking for ways to punish people. And one of those is in Florida, of course. State Representative Randy Fine, and Randy, this ain't fine. He wants to strip $200 million from about a dozen counties where those school boards had the audacity to want to protect the children under their care by enforcing mask mandates. Now, the governor there said, no, we can't do it. We're going to, no. And these counties, they had the audacity to say, you know what, we should have the local autonomy. Remember the Republican Party who feared big government? Remember the Republican Party who said, local good, big government bad? Remember that? Yeah, that doesn't exist. Never really did. That was all just a gimmick, a good Madison Avenue PR scheme. These are authoritarians from the top. But here, this moment, it's about punishing. They're going to take $200 million from these counties because that's going to help their education budgets. And as I said, it's going back to this punishment now. We're never going to let you forget that we were right and you were wrong, even though they're wrong. Even though lives were saved. Even though we could have had a much, much worse situation. Because understand from the beginning, and my point from the very start was about flattening the curve and not overblowing our healthcare system. If we did that, and look, we came close in a lot of instances. If we were to do that, people would have died from a whole bunch of other things. And now you got these people saying, "Oh, lockdowns are horrible, and all this was bad." Well, we didn't blow out our healthcare system completely. And yeah, people did die of other things. And yeah, there were negative things that came out of this. And this is where the Johns Hopkins Economic Department, their study is something to look at in the future when talking about political economy, when talking about how to craft policy. But to say it was all a hoax and it was all ridiculous and it was all bad, I'm sorry. You lost me. You lost me completely. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Gonna take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1937. That was the day Sheriff Theodore Middleton and his deputies in Harlan County shot into the house of UMWA organizer Marshall Music, killing his 15-year-old son Bennett. Music organized for the UMWA's District 19. He traveled all over Harlan County. As a district organizer, he was beaten, arrested, and evicted from company housing repeatedly. Some of the mines were organized in Harlan County, but barely. Many coal operators controlled area sheriff's departments and restricted the daily life of miners and their union representatives. Organizing drives started in January of 1937. Union men faced extreme physical violence. Organizers were tear gassed in early January. Their cars were dynamited later that month. Music and his wife were shot at and warned repeatedly to leave town. Another organizer had his door busted down by deputies and his house ransacked. Music finally agreed to leave town to keep his family safe. But on this day, upon arriving in Pineville, he learned his son had been killed in a firestorm of bullets shot into his house. On March 22nd, the La Follette Committee on Civil Liberties opened hearings into Bloody Harlan. It lasted for 6 weeks. The Justice Department indicted 69 Harlan County coal operators and law officers for criminal conspiracy in violation of the Wagner Act. Meanwhile, the new National Labor Relations Board answered the UMWA charges and found in the union's favor. The board issued a cease and desist order against interference with union activity and ordered the reinstatement of 60 coal miners. As a result, union membership soared to 9,000. The UMWA would continue for decades to fight to keep Harlan County organized.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So like I said, it's all about freedom. It used to be about liberty. And you know, if you've listened to this program long enough, for the longest time, I've been talking about the Lochner era. Taking us back 100 years to labor conditions that were deplorable. If you were willing and desperate enough to work for poverty wages in horrible conditions, that was your choice. It was your liberty. And they started using freedom instead of liberty. So this whole freedom concept, not surprising to get tacked on to the truckers thing up north and, well, the right wing who seems to know nothing about it. It seems to be their talking point. While they're talking about freedom, they're trying to, well, shut people up everywhere else, which I find kind of interesting. And here to share some thoughts on the topic of freedom and our crazy right-wing friends, I've asked Maya May to come talk with us. She's the co-host of We're Speaking over at the Lincoln Project TV network there. Maya, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you for having me, Rick.
So freedom. When you think freedom, where's your mind go? Freedom.
Well, because every time I hear freedom, I'm like, freedom to do what? Like, what have we really been doing with our freedom anyway? Like, have we been doing much with it in the past years?
Well, I would like to believe that I have a little bit, but you're right. What is freedom and what more do you want? And look, I listen to my right-wing friends, and it's this idea that they can do whatever to whomever, however, wherever, whenever, that it's all about them. And this is a very selfish ideology, and it goes back to the Reagan era of, we're all individuals and hooray for me, and the one with the most toys when dies wins, greed is good. It goes back to that era, so I'm not surprised we're where we are.
Well, and I've been reading more this year because I've had some time to sit down and read. And I'm reading a book about the difference between our society and other societies. Like in America, we're very individualistic. It's about the individual and not necessarily about community. And I heard you, speaking earlier about that, where it's like, we're supposed to be working together towards the common good. That's why we wear the mask. It's decency. It's common decency. And we've completely lost that. It's like, no, but I don't want to wear a mask. And so what we basically have right now is, a bunch of us throwing temper tantrums. Like we have grown people acting like 2-year-olds all over the place. And it's interesting because rather than our leaders trying to bring people together, they're just kind of stoking the flames of that. And so it's like, where are we headed as a country if we can't even agree on common good when it comes to our public health? It's not like the people who have been dying aren't actually dying. Like there's legitimate visceral death. We're seeing, healthcare workers getting burnt out, not to mention all of the effects of long-term COVID that we're hearing about as well. So all of this is very real, and yet we're fighting against kind of these facts that aren't real.
It's real to you, it's real to me, it's real to us, it's real to the families who are affected. It's not real to them because they're used to alternative facts. They're used to living in an alternative reality that, people don't really die from COVID, Maya. They die from something else, and COVID was just there. So COVID doesn't kill anyone. It's just, I love the logic because then it gives you the ability to wipe everything else away. Because, it was something else. It wasn't COVID. Because, a guy driving a truck is now a mortician. A guy driving the truck is now an epidemiologist and a virologist all in one because they heard it on the radio.
Yes, they did their research. They grabbed that microscope. I actually have my daughter's microscope in my house, and I've been doing my own research this entire time. And I can concur that COVID is real. So there you go.
Wouldn't you really, honestly and truthfully, wouldn't you like to see some of these people's reading lists when they say, I've still got to do my research? Wouldn't you really like to see what it is they're reading?
I truly, truly would. And I'm guessing it's what they're clicking. More importantly, it's something that could be put up overnight. And I think that's the problem with a lot of the information out there is it's hard to distinguish what's been written on a blog by a 16-year-old in a basement somewhere while he's playing video games trying to have fun versus actual legitimate information. You know, media literacy has not been taught in a long while, and I think now we're seeing the effects of that.
Yeah, I'm going to steal Trey Crowder, a friend of the show, Trey Crowder's line that doing your research isn't watching YouTube videos while on the can.
No, I mean, it's a kind of research, I suppose,
But here, the thing that gets me is while we're talking about freedom, and look, we all believe in freedom. We all believe that we should have the right to speak our minds, that we have freedom of speech. I think you and I would agree that there are limits to that. You have the right to say and do whatever you want until it harms me. I think, as Justice Black said, you have the right to flail your fists until they touch the tip of my nose. I think we would all agree on that. But yet now I'm looking around at the punishment part of this. And as I said at the beginning, what's frightening to me is that now the radical right is these folks who terrorized our country on January 6th and their ilk are now talking about punishing us in the aftermath as we come out of the pandemic. And they're going to do it in various ways, either in stores or in person or legislatively. And I look at this group, PEN America, who's been tracking these educational gag orders. And to me, this is a big part of this. And this is, kind of like a triple threat, if you will. Because one, you get to go after and harass people that you didn't like teachers. Two, you get to destroy public education so you can privatize that. And then three, oh boy, we can really make people angry and cause more division. So it seems like, the triple hat of horrible.
Yeah, truly it is. And it's things that, I keep going back to the fact that if you were to go up to somebody 5 years ago and say, hey, by the way, in 2022, they're going to be talking about putting cameras in classrooms and tracking what teachers are saying and creating bills to ban what people are reading, you would say, no, that's impossible. This is America. We believe in freedom. Like that would be what you'd think we'd say. And so to me, what's deeply, deeply concerning is that we're acting as if we're not all in the same boat, and you've got half the country poking holes like in this boat, and so we're sinking. And I'm wondering when the sanity is going to come back. And I see, I talk to Gen Z a lot, and they see right through it. They're so savvy. They watch what's happening. They don't like to be told what to do or what not to read more than anyone else. And they've been going through it. They're the ones who've truly, truly been suffering in the last couple of years, not being able to have the kind of experiences in the classroom that they were having. Right. And so on top of it, the adults are acting crazy.
Yeah, no, look, I'm hopeful. The only thing that gives me hope is that the younger generation does get it, and the hope is that they show up come election time to vote. Because historically, young people do not vote. As much as we want to say, oh, they're the future and all that, they're not the now. They're not the now in showing up to vote. And they gotta, if you want me to give you credit for being savvy and smart, that's follow through. That gets my attention.
So historically, they didn't show up to vote, but historically, we didn't have reality show people as presidents either. And so times are changing, Rick, and both in the midterms as well as in 2020, they actually came out in numbers that were on par with older generations. So they are truly understanding what's at stake. And a lot of us, we think they're on TikTok just, doing choreographed dances and things, but no, they're informed. They're so much more informed than we even give them credit for. My daughter's 14. She gets annoyed with me because of the stuff that I don't know. She's like, what do you mean you didn't know that? How did you not know this? And I'm like, I don't watch 30-second videos on TikTok all day long. That's why I don't know.
I have a job.
Yes, exactly.
No, and look, I'm hoping that's the reality. I'm hoping they get out the vote and there's some hope for the future. But I'm watching what's going on right now. And as we've been talking about, these educational gag orders kind of have me freaked out because, this, like the one in Oklahoma is probably the most, Oklahoma, Utah, these are the most crazy. The one in Oklahoma says that if you do anything that is against my sincerely held belief, that I can then sue the teacher, not the school, not the teachers union, not the county, not the city, the individual teacher for $10,000 per incident per person. So if you're in a classroom, an overcrowded classroom with 50 kids in it, and a teacher says something that all of the parents go, well, we're offended, and hey, I can make 10 grand out of it. You know, she's going to leave teaching, or he's going to leave teaching in a heartbeat.
Well, and that's the thing. It's like, really, right now is when we're going to decide to go after teachers, when we're going to punish teachers after everything that they've been through. And once again, it's like what we were seeing in Texas. It's like where you're weaponizing citizens against each other, right? And this is all, again, like we know, it's to stoke fear. It's to try to create disorder so that, you know, the far right can come in and say, only we can fix it. We're going to bring order to all of this chaos. So they're creating chaos on purpose.
Absolutely. In fact, I just talked about this yesterday. I was driving in the car, and on the radio comes one of those breaking news, big news. Pennsylvania's running out of teachers. How are our children get teachers in the classroom? Solutions at 5. And they're all the same bad ideas that have been laying around in these think tanks for years, because ultimately, and maybe you'll agree with me, maybe you won't, I see this as a well-funded, well-organized campaign to destroy public education as its end game. But right now, it's about tearing us apart. And the sad reality is, you said we're divided in half. I don't think we are. I think this is, a minority of people who are well-funded, that we've given way too much money to, who are just out to cause trouble and using the dim to do it.
I do think you're right about that, both about the end game and the numbers. I like your numbers. They're more hopeful than mine. But I do think this idea that the end game is to destroy public education by first undermining and destroying our faith in it is definitely happening, because, teachers already don't get paid enough, right?
No, look, you wouldn't get me to be a teacher. They don't get paid enough. They don't get respect. Then they got to put up with oversized classrooms. And look, I grew up in an era where you talk back to a teacher, you got slapped. You can't.
So me too. I went to Catholic school, actually, and the nuns beat me all throughout kindergarten, first and second grade, until my parents were like, "Okay, that's enough beatings for our child now. Let's take her out."
We absolutely. My mother was left-handed, taught me to write left-handed. I went to Catholic school. They beat that right out of me. Now I can't write with either hand. And I say this all the time. And if I knew where Sister Mary St. Leo was buried, I would dig her up so I could kill her again. That's how horrible that woman was to me.
I love that we remember our nuns, because for me it was Sister Mary Paschal and Sister Mary Maurice. Those were the ones that beat me the most. So.
And, it could have been any Catholic school. Our Lady of Great Perpetual Motion, Our Lady of Great Pain and Misery, all of that. We went to the same place, so I'm right there with you. You listen to the Rick Smith Show here with Maya May. She's the co-host of We're Speaking over at Lincoln Project TV. You can check out their stuff at lincolnproject.us. We'll get links out on social media how you can do that. So the question then becomes, how do we take this moment? Because there are pockets of organizing going on. I just saw a story today that in blue areas, suburban moms are fighting back against this stuff, and you go, oh boy, that's great. The problem is there isn't billionaire money behind that. Where's the path forward?
I was thinking about this the other day. It feels like, how they say, like, if there is some sort of emergency that you're out in public and you want help, you shouldn't just say somebody call 911. You have to actually point to somebody and say, you call 911. I feel like that's what's happening right now. I feel like all of the billionaires on the left and the progressives are all kind of like, okay, well, we're just waiting for somebody to do something, to get involved, etc. And I think it's at this point, all of us, it has to be a grassroots effort, right? And so groups like these suburban moms, I think they're called Red Wine and Blue. They drink and work together to create better communities for their kids.
And what's wrong with that?
Yes, exactly. I think it's amazing. But groups like that have to be active and reach out and seek that funding with clear plans to put in place. And because we're seeing it on the right, obviously, between the stuff that Turning Point is doing with like the professor watch list. I don't know if you've seen this on their website. It is absolutely mind-boggling to me. It's got a whole field where you can fill out information and report on a teacher. And so they've got millions of dollars in resources to help build their end of things. And it's like, okay, we need the equivalent opposite, really, equivalent on the other end in order to get out of this, really, truly.
You need to build the infrastructure that the right has built masterfully. Look, I do give credit where credit is due. You look at what the radical right has done. They've built a think tank network all across this country, the state policy network. Every state has at least one bad idea machine. Some have two. They have the Federalist Society, the American Legislative Exchange Council. They've got the county level ones. They've drilled down into school boards now because they've built they've built their infrastructure. And look, all that stuff that went on in Virginia, and you know this as well as anyone, all that stuff was manufactured. They just scared white suburban women. They go, oh my God, they're going to teach them about some theory, and we know it's critical. And then they threw the word race in there, and oh my God, hair on fire. People at the school boards losing their minds.
Right. And now look and see where it's gotten them, because now they have a governor who clearly is not prepared to lead his state. And so we're already seeing, blowback from that. But I think at the end of the day, like, people have to realize that if they do not get engaged right now, and especially at the local level, because most people aren't used to having to say, hey, we're going to get organized and go to school board meetings. That is not what your average citizen is doing. But democracy doesn't work unless we actually make it work. And I think what we're seeing is the long-term effects of the lack of civic engagement. Yep. Everybody, it's like it's somebody else's thing to do. It's somebody else. Like, I see so many people who say they're apolitical, and I'm like, just because you choose to not participate in politics doesn't mean the laws of the nation cease to apply to you. It's not like suddenly you cease to exist. And so this idea that you're apolitical, like, no, that you can't be that.
No, I'm with you. So last question I've got for you: the way forward in this is arguably motivating people, but I think Democrats have to act a little urgent. I don't see the kind of hair on fire that you would expect in the moment that I think we would agree we're in difficult times. Do you believe in democracy or don't you? Do you believe in the rule of law or don't you? Do you believe that we should have public education or don't you? These are very clear, cut and dry questions that, I keep having people go, Democrats and Republicans, they're all the same. No, they're not all the same.
Mm-hmm. I think what's happening truly on the Democratic side is that there is a failure to understand how truly mission-driven and evil the right can be. I think everybody has this idea that most people have a sense of morality, and so they can't put themselves in that mindset because it doesn't occur to them that people truly do think like that. And so you have the right that's very mission driven, very organized, well funded. A lot of this has to do with as well as like the white nationalism that has to do with white Christian nationalism. Yep. And so you have people on the left, the Democrats, who don't fully understand that, or we have to act like we're on a mission.
There you go. We absolutely do. Maya, I appreciate the time. Great stuff. I look forward to having you back again real soon.
All right. Thanks, Rick.
Good stuff. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1854. That was the day that novelist George Lepard died in Philadelphia. Lepard was friends with Edgar Allan Poe. He is most well known for his novel about Philadelphia, titled Quaker City. The book is considered to be one of the first American muckraking novels. Muckrakers write to uncover misconduct or muck in public life. The book cast the city elites in an unflattering light and explored the crooked underbelly of the city. The elites did not much care for the book, but the working class made it the best-selling novel in the country. In 1849, Lepard helped found the Brotherhood of the Union, which later became known as the Brotherhood of America. It was a secret benevolent society, a kind of Freemasons for the working man. The Brotherhood issued badges and medals. They borrowed from names and symbols of the American Revolution. They promoted a shorter workday, education, and election reform. By 1850, the Brotherhood had expanded to 19 states. Lepard was elected Supreme Washington, the highest title for the leadership position of the group. He died a few years later, succumbing to tuberculosis at the age of just 31. But the Brotherhood continued long after his death into the late 20th century. In a book about New York, Lepard once wrote, "Enormous wealth is only enormous crime." Yes, we may phrase it as we will, the immense concentration of wealth in the hands of any one man or in the hands of any corporate power is an evil fraught with more danger to the happiness and liberty of the nation than all the crowned tyrants of the world. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Oh, freedom. Yep, freedom. You know, and I can't get my head off the topic, as we were talking about in the last segment. The fact that the very people who were literally willing to overthrow our government, violent insurrection to stop a peaceful transfer of power, they're the ones lecturing us about freedom. What kind of a rabbit hole did we fall down? Crazy time. But here to share some thoughts and maybe get some ideas out of, I've asked our good friend Jared Yates Sexton to come talk with us. Jared is a political analyst, host of the Muckrake podcast, also author of the fabulous book American Rule, How a Nation Conquered the World but Failed Its People. Jared, thanks for taking time for us.
Rick, I'm confused. Are you talking about legitimate political discourse?
Yes. And not the kind with the flag stabbing police officers and defecating on floors.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we're both on the same page here. I didn't want to get on here with some fake news. I thought we were talking about legitimate political discourse.
Let's start there. The legitimate political discourse. What kind of Orwellian BS is that?
Can you imagine being in that room? Can you imagine how many political operatives it took to piece that together? Those three ridiculous words. It's incredible, isn't it? And to bring that forward and try and peddle that. I'm sorry, but when Mitch McConnell blanches away from it in horror, you know that you've gone wrong somewhere.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I talked about this yesterday. I don't believe a word that comes out of Mitch's mouth. I'd believe more if it came out of the other orifice. 'Cause that's probably truer. But, he's looking at the political calculus, and the political calculus is this guy's guilty. There's going to be a lot of heads rolling, and he doesn't want his being one of them.
Yeah, and what else is happening with Mitch McConnell is, it's the same thing that John Boehner and Paul Ryan looked at as well, which is the dog got off the leash. And they're looking around at the Trumpist, authoritarian, anti-democratic movement, and the Republican Party's terrified of these people. They really, truly are. They want to use them, and they're great attack dogs, but there is a movement that has taken place at this point that Mitch McConnell even realizes that he's lost control of, and he's lost momentum within the Republican Party, which should tell everyone at home just how bad this situation is.
Yeah, I mean, when you've got people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, in your state, running around, threatening gazpacho, that just makes me go, I want her. I think the Democrats made a huge mistake throwing her off the Education Committee, because that would have been a priceless moment. Gazpacho? What? We having lunch? What are you talking about?
I got to be honest. The mistake was throwing her off the Education Committee because she needed it. I thought maybe she could have got some remedial work there. I got to tell you, she is not the sharpest cookie in the shed. And this whole situation, I mean, and you know this as well as I do, this new iteration of post-Trump Republicans, they are grifters and they're dangerous. They have no actual ideology. They have no actual understanding of anything, but they all want to be reality TV stars. They're all competing to be on OANN's, name the next demagogue. I mean, it has pretty much gone completely off the rails. And I mean, to simply listen to her on any given day, it would be funny if it wasn't just absolutely so horrific.
I mean, terrifying that this woman is sitting in Congress. Now, granted, she's not on a committee, and I think she should be, and I took a lot of heat for it. But I think, if you're on the Education Committee and you go, we need more education funding, Exhibit A, gazpacho. All you got to say is gazpacho.
No, I got to say with Marjorie Taylor Greene, I think we've all worked with people in the past who, they sort of incompetence their way out of their responsibilities, and that's sort of what's happened here. I mean, she basically exists now to roll out these videos, her and Matt Gaetz, how he's not in jail yet, I still don't know, but they basically are just walking around creating viral videos on both sides of it. I mean, it's a national embarrassment.
And we're paying for it. And that's the weird part about it. I want to get your thoughts about the stories coming out of Mar-a-Lago, as evidently Trump decided there were 15 boxes that he thought should have been his, probably more. Now we're finding out that some of that was classified information. And this is a guy who ran on her emails. You may remember something about emails, maybe a little something. I'm not quite sure if you remember, but there was something about emails and how, national security was at risk and we should be locking her up. And yet we find that, he's got all this stuff, love letters to all kinds of stuff that you go, what? Any accountability here? Do you see anything happening with this?
Rick, we're about 2 days from finding out he took the silverware. I mean, that's really where this thing is going. And honestly, none of this is shocking. I mean, he had just taken the oath of office and he was starting to give out classified material to people who told him they liked his tie. I mean, we're literally looking at a total criminal. And this is a country that survived Richard Milhouse Nixon. And all of a sudden, we're looking at this guy who was taking U-Hauls worth of classified material out of the White House. And you're exactly right by pointing out the hypocrisy of this. And none of it's real. None of it is principled. None of the things that they said about emails or servers or whatever ever actually meant anything. I mean, these are petty criminals. That's what we're talking about here. We're talking about people who should spend some time in a county jail, not to mention a federal bed.
I like that. But I asked the question, did he take the hand towels and the soap? You went right for the silverware. So, he probably got both for all we know. Because evidently he's not doing well. Evidently businesses are way down because people are running. And that's what happens when you try and shake them down for 4 years.
Yeah, and the thing about it is, and it couldn't happen to a worse fella. I mean, his control over the Republican Party is even slipping right now, and they're looking at a newer model down there in Florida. He's not even the king of Mar-a-Lago anymore at this point. I mean, everything at this juncture is just looking worse and worse for him. But at the same time, they can't leave him. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's just and speaking of Nixon, it's the same thing. You had people who stayed with him long after 1972, and Trump's going to be the exact same way. People are going to go down with this guy, but it's just getting more pathetic and even more dangerous by the day.
No, that's the frightening part of all this. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with Jared Yates Sexton. Jared's a political analyst, host of the Muckrake podcast. Make sure you find his podcast wherever you get podcasts. Also, he is the author of American Rule, How a Nation Conquered the World but Failed Its People. And look, we're failing our people every day by the fact that we can't get policy moved through that's going to make people's lives better. And I look at what's going on with this trucker thing up in Canada. I view this as the moneyed interests really pushing something to keep people at each other's throat, keep chaos in the mainstream media, keep us thinking that this is an actual large movement when it's not the majority. 80-90% of the people in Ottawa are vaccinated. They don't want those people there. And you go, this is one of those constructs to keep us pitted against one another so we don't demand better. At least that's my thought. I'm curious yours.
No, you've got this dead on. The same people who pay incredible amounts of money to keep any legislation from passing through Congress that helps anybody except for themselves. These are the same people who paid for January 6th to happen, which, by the way, was another capital city that was overrun by people absolutely submerged and drowning in conspiracy theories. This thing that's happening in Canada is more or less a pilot project to see how you can bring a capital city to its knees. And one of the things that I've been keeping a watch out for over the past couple of weeks as this has happened is there's been a lot of talk of trying to replicate this within the United States of America. I mean, this is moneyed interest, dark money, corporate billionaire libertarian donors who are carrying these things out, who have absolutely paralyzed not only our government, but now they're going after the capitals. I mean, it's really insidious stuff.
No, and this is all stuff that in their little think tanks that they've had around for years, they've gamed out. They've always had a doomsday scenario, and they're getting to play the moves on the chessboard. And as you're talking about this happening here, there's talk of it starting on Super Bowl Sunday. I guess the president was briefed about it today. And the weird thing is that what I'm told is the rally in Canada is about a vaccine mandate for truckers that they're supposedly against, yet all these other issues have popped up. Yet here in the U.S., truckers are exempt from the vaccine mandate. So it's not the same thing, and it's what you're saying. It's all about all about opportunism and all about causing the chaos that the wealth class in this country desperately needs to keep we the people in line.
Yeah, and if you actually look at how this always happens, I mean, you don't have to look much further than the Tea Party. What these billionaire right-wing donors want to do is they want to create astroturfed, quote-unquote, grassroots operations, right? They want to radicalize people through conspiracy theories and basically take the anger that belongs to them and then divert it to vulnerable populations and their political enemies. And they create these astroturfed fake movements that change the discourse and also make it seem as if there's some sort of a popular directive. But that's not what this is at all. It's actually a really insidious psychological operation. And this is what they do. This is what they do with their billions of dollars. They create these fake movements and they put people in a lot of danger.
No, and that's the thing. There's a lot of danger here. I mean, we're in a moment that is kind of frightening, because I think one of the biggest failures that Joe Biden has had thus far in his presidency is he still looks at Mitch McConnell and the Republicans in the Senate as people who care about this country. I think he still looks at the Republican Party as the Republican Party of 10 or 15 or 20 years ago, and not what they've morphed into. And I think that is a miscalculation from the beginning, because they're going to do nothing to help move this country forward. If anything, they're going to continue to tear us down. And I look at Ted Cruz, who somehow Ted Cruz thinks he should be advising the people in the truckers in Canada to do more. And you go, wait a second, didn't you flee your state when they were in need? Why are you causing trouble somewhere else? Go back to Cancun. I was
going to say, he probably wants to help out in Canada because that's his home. I mean, to be honest, I mean, this whole thing, and I got to tell you, where my alarms went off with Joe Biden's candidacy was when he said, I'll get elected and then they'll wake up and everything will change. And I understand where it came from, but there are so many politicians, Democrats and Republicans alike, who think that this is politics as usual.
Yep.
And that's not what this is. I mean, you look at something like this, quote unquote, CRT conspiracy craze. That's about going in and literally eradicating public education. That's about going in and just privatizing this thing. Like you want to talk about chess, Rick. We're talking about a near checkmate situation. And that's why people need to get serious about this. They should have been serious years ago.
Right.
They are years behind, billions of dollars behind. And it's time to get serious about this entire situation and figure out some solutions.
And this is where my question was going to go. I don't see the kind of urgency that I feel in this moment. I don't see the kind of urgency that I think we should be under with a Democratic Party who seems kind of just, not as urgent as I would like to be. I think the rule of law is under attack. I think democracy itself is under attack, and I don't see the urgency.
Well, let's speak a little bit of hard truth. The Democratic Party decades ago completely betrayed their allies in the labor movement. They betrayed the vulnerable communities that they were representing, and they went in full bore with neoliberalism. And it's really hard to realize that this moment, and I'm not just talking about Trumpism, I'm talking about authoritarianism. I'm talking about this new national conservative movement that is coalescing behind what we used to call Trumpism. What gave birth to that was neoliberalism.
Correct.
And what needs to happen right now is some people need to take a real hard, long look in the mirror and realize that they made some mistakes and that they need to make good on some broken promises.
No, and that starts with, and I think Biden's trying in a little way to do some of this. I mean, the fact that he's doing a lot to reshore manufacturing. We're building a lot of factories supposedly coming up very soon. There's some of that stuff reinvesting in the country and the infrastructure bill. I think some of that a little bit is moving us, but not far enough and not fast enough, in my opinion.
Well, and here's the thing about it. You can't go anywhere until you start telling people what's actually happening. Like, that's the problem with Biden and the Democrats, is they're not able to explain why this is happening, because in order to do it, you have to admit some fault.
Right.
You have to start calling it the authoritarianism that it is. And quite frankly, you have to move away from neoliberalism and austerity politics. And in order to do that, it takes a major sea change, but they're going to have to do it. Otherwise, they're going to be wiped out. They're going to lose every possible election that is on the board unless they start actually calling this what it is and moving in some sort of a new direction.
Is that possible? I mean, honestly, you look at the fact that you've got, probably 5, 6, maybe more Democratic senators who are, they're right there. Aren't you just sending them to the sidelines and then ending up losing the Senate?
I got to be honest with you, Rick. I don't think that the answer revolves around national politics. I really, truly don't. I think it's grassroots stuff. I think it's labor movements. I think it's solidarity at a local level. We got to get some people in politics who aren't going to betray other people. They're not going to sell them out. They're not going to go in and take the corporate profits. They're going to go in to take out Citizens United. They're going to go in to take on corruption. Those are the only answers at this point. I don't think national politics is where to look.
No, but sadly, what a lot of institutions, labor, the Democratic Party, a number of places, they want the silver bullet. A couple of months before election time, they ramp up, and then they disband afterwards. Whereas the Republicans, it's 24/7, 365, year after year after year, they're building and building and building, and created an incredible messaging machine. They've got grassroots, they've got digital that they've done so much on. There's a lot of catch up here.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, one of the worst things about the Democratic Party is that they basically told everybody, worry about voting every 2 years and you've done your job. But that's not how democracy works. Democracy is a full-time job that you got to do on top of your full-time job, probably your 2 full-time jobs at this point.
Yeah. You
have to go out, you have to organize, you have to fight for these things. You got to run for your school board. You got to fight these QAnon freaks who are taking over your school boards. I mean, all of this stuff, it's going to take so much work, so much elbow grease. And you're right, we have so much time to make up for, but I still have hope that we can do it.
I'm there, right there with you. Jared, I appreciate the time as always. Great stuff. I love the podcast. I hope folks will take a look at the Muckrake podcast. Also grab the book, the American Rule, How a Nation Conquered the World but Failed Its People, written by Jared Yates Sexton. Jared, as always, great stuff, my friend.
Thanks, buddy.
And look, he's spot on. And, it takes us. And I've been saying this for years. We're the reason we're in this position because we voted for these people. We continually bought the big lies. We continually bought the fantasy that if we just give corporate America and the billionaires enough, somehow it'll trickle down on the rest of us like rivers of gold and honey, like manna from heaven. And what's it gotten us? Well, it's gotten us, as John Edwards put it, 2 Americas. The ones who have, and then the rest of us. And what the ones who have do masterfully, they pit the rest of us against one another. That's how they win. Love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Got a thought, question, comments? Give us a call, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Back after this. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 2000. Members of the Society of Professional Engineering Employees in Aerospace, or SPEA, went on strike against Boeing. Boeing is the leading producer of commercial airplanes in the world. In 2000, their headquarters were based in Seattle, Washington. But since then, they have moved their headquarters to Chicago, Illinois. The Seattle walkout is considered perhaps the largest white-collar strike in U.S. labor history. The strike caught most people by surprise. It was not expected that the engineers and technical workers of Boeing would actually go on strike. SPEA had never called a strike in its more than 50-year history. Yet, when their contract negotiations did not meet the expectations of their members with regard to bonuses and health care coverage, the 17,000 workers walked off the job. The picketers embraced the uniqueness of engineers going on strike. The striking engineers picketed with signs that read, "No nerds, no birds." To ward off the chilly Seattle weather, they gathered around burn barrels. But the EPA ruled the barrels did not meet emissions standards. Undeterred, one of the strike leaders used his engineering skills to design a special barrel. Its smoke stove pipe stood up to EPA standards. The barrel has been used at many other strikes since. After 40 days, the strikers won almost all of their demands. AFL-CIO President Richard Trumka declared, "I've got to tell you, brothers and sisters, you've earned the admiration, the respect, and the appreciation of the entire labor movement from all 40 million of us. The ingenuity of the engineers demonstrated that labor solidarity was not only something for blue-collar workers." Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. If you're just joining us, by all means, grab the podcast if you've missed any portion of the program. You can do that at thericksmithshow.com or any place where you grab your podcasts. While you're there, leave a 5-star rating. We'd appreciate that. Maybe a comment. We're going to try and do better at responding to the comments. Been a little slow on that, but working on it. But by all means, download the podcast. Rob on Twitter points out that now we were talking about, Trump and all of the, now we know classified information that were in those 15 boxes that evidently he thought was his. Maybe it just fell into his luggage. Not sure. Maybe blame it on Melania. Maybe it was her fault. Or maybe one of the kids. Blame it on Barron. Can't blame it on the dog because I don't think they had one. But all of this stuff. Rob says, frankly, I'm surprised he didn't wheel the Resolute desk out to a U-Haul on a dolly and have Eric drive it down to Mar-a-Lago. I got to tell you, I'm kind of surprised too. And then replace it with a knockoff. That I could see. Like a cheap plastic knockoff, one made in China. Yeah, the fun. And the question is will he be held accountable? Because remember, he ran on Lock Her Up over those emails where there were supposedly a handful of what became classified documents where at the time, and this is the important part, at the time she sent the emails were not classified. They then went back and classified them and then said, oh, well, now that's a crime. That's ludicrous. Now, look, I'm not defending her email use. We should have a much better system for communicating. By far should have a much better system. But to hold her to a different standard than everybody else, sorry, not there. Now, the guy who knew better, because remember, he ran on this. He should have straightened all this up, right? And to have him take 15 boxes, 15 plus, we still don't know how much he has. And for what purpose? I argue for shredding purposes. Because they don't want people to know what they did. One of my favorite tweets of the day, Kentucky gun fetishist Representative Thomas Voltaire Massey. You would think someone with a degree from MIT, with a master's degree from MIT, would be smarter. You really would. He tweeted out, over 70% of Americans who died with COVID died on Medicare. And some people want Medicare for all. Anybody have any clue what this moron's talking about? The people who had Medicare as their insurance and they died, they had insurance that was Medicare, as everyone over 65 does. And since a large portion of the people, the mortality from COVID are people over 65, it would go to say that, yeah, that would be people on Medicare who paid their insurance. That would be people who have Medicare. Medicare is not a doctor or specialist. Medicare isn't the ventilator. Medicare isn't the hospital. They're simply the payer. So I'm kind of confused. I'm kind of confused what this is. Now, I know what this is. This is a talking point for the dim. Because you go, 70% of people died on Medicare. Oh, Medicare is horrible. Well, let me tell you this. Here's a statistic for the genius. 100% of people who on Medicare who die are dead. I mean, might as well say something stupid like that. Every senior citizen who dies, 100% of seniors who die are on Medicare because they all have Medicare. I'm confused at what the point here is. Other than, look, a shot at Medicare for all, which I'm a supporter of. I think we need to have health care for everyone. I think if you get sick, the last thing you should be worrying about is, am I going to go broke? I think we should have a system of that I don't have to worry about. Is this doctor in network? Is he not in the network? Am I going to get hit with a huge bill? Is this doctor in and this one out? I should worry about getting well. If I'm lying on the ground having a heart attack, I shouldn't be speed dialing the hospitals to see who's got a coupon this week. That doesn't make sense. Just like having someone like this, and the good folks of Kentucky, what's wrong with you? One of the poorest states in the country with one of the lowest insured rates in the country. This is your guy. It's crazy. Just we live in crazy times. And this is, again, one of those issues. This is where this black and white kind of thinking is frightening. Because someone's going to read that and go, oh my God, 70% of the people who died, it was because of Medicare. Medicare killed 70% of the people. And then they're going to regurgitate that over and over and over again. And then the message will be, Medicare kills people. There's the bumper sticker. And then when you go, no, Granny, my grandmother had Medicare, and if you would have threatened to take it away, she'd have beat you with her walker. Because it kept her alive for many years. And this is why we can't deal with big, complicated issues. Because we've got to boil it down to the simplistic for the dim. Healthcare is a complicated issue. But at the end of it, and this is where I am, this is where I've always been. At the end of it, if I'm sick, I should be able to see a doctor. If I get into trouble, I have the right to see a lawyer. Why don't I have a right to see a doctor? If I'm sick, I should have the right to be cared for. And I shouldn't have to worry about being saddled with a lifetime of debt or being hounded by debt collectors while I'm trying to get well. I mean, these are all ridiculous positions that, quite frankly, most of the industrialized world doesn't deal with. Just us, because we're Americans. We believe in profit. We overpay for everything. Why? Because we've got to have profit. Got to have massive profit. Not just a little bit, but a lot. We got to have CEOs with double-digit million-dollar paychecks every year. Got to have shareholders who get fed off the misery of others. Instead of saying, how do we make sure families are secure in their health? How do we make sure? No, I'm not saying I want government-run hospitals and government-hired doctors, and I don't want an absolute universal system. I want people to have insurance. I want people to get the care that they need. I want community hospitals. I think we need them. I think we need community health care. And it shouldn't be a profit system. There should be no for-profit anything in healthcare. Your misery should not be someone else's profit. That just seems like, I don't know, unequal kind of positions where you've got bean counters running hospitals going, how much can we squeeze out of these people? How little care can we give them while maximizing our profits? It seems a little odd to me. And look, I'm not even 100% sold on Medicare for all. If you come to me and say, hey, there's a plan that would be run by private corporations, and it's going to be cheaper, it's going to be more effective, it's going to cover everyone, it's going to be portable, I'd listen. It's going to be cradle to grave, so there's no disincentives. Because understand our system right now. If you're healthy enough to work, you get private health insurance. So immediately, the private insurers get the people who are less sick, the less costly. Charge them a lot of money, don't put out much money in claims. And then they deny them enough care, especially preventative care, to where they eventually get to the point where if they get to 65, they've got a whole bunch of things. And look, I've got a friend who limped into 65, and at 65, a whole bunch of costs because couldn't get anything done before because kept being denied. So the disincentive of preventative care is right there, already rigged into the system. And if you're not healthy enough to work, well, you're picked up on the public plan anyway. So let me get this straight, just so I'm perfectly clear on this. Our healthcare system is set up like this. Healthy, profitable people that cost less to take care of get to pay premiums to for-profit groups that then shell that money out to the shareholders and the big salaries. And the sick, the poor, the elderly, the costly folks, the people in their first and last 5 years of life, which we know overwhelmingly the most expensive years in a person's life, the first and last 5, that's picked up by the taxpayers. But hey, we can't insure everyone. See, now I've said I'm in favor of one giant, and this is conservative thinking. Understand, when someone tells you they're conservative and they're against the idea of a Medicare for all, they're lying to you. Conservative thinking is one giant pool, basic insurance risking. The larger the pool, the less the risk. We put everybody in, the sick, the old, the young, the healthy, everybody in. We get better outcomes. And if it starts cradle to grave, we get constant care that maybe we don't get the big problems. Like if you address diabetes younger in life, maybe you're not going to have amputations. Maybe you're not going to have people going blind. Maybe you're not going to have all of the other things that come with it. But the Thomas Masseys of the world, no. Their religion, their allegiance, profit. Not to the people, not to health, none of that. Not to good policy. Someone like Massey's in government for one reason and one reason only. To block things. To ensure government doesn't work. Just like they say it doesn't. It's always been amazing to me that people who go, well, government can't do anything, so elect me and I'll make sure. It's bizarre. Absolutely bizarre. Now, this is why we do need good people in Congress and in the Senate. And I see that Al Franken, former Democratic senator from Minnesota, and Minnesota listeners, by all means, reach out to Al and say, hey, let's run again. Maybe move to Wisconsin and take on Ron Johnson. But he said, look, he said, I love my time in the Senate. I love the job. I got a lot done. I was able to accomplish things I couldn't accomplish anywhere else. So, yeah, I'd be tempted to try and run again. And I think he should. I think, and I said this at the time, he shouldn't have resigned. He should have gone through the process, and had there been an investigation, and gone through it. And the weird thing is even the woman that was in the picture, she didn't want him to resign either. And this is where the cancel stuff goes a bit far. Now, had he grabbed her, whole different scenario. Had he done, the things that, well, quite frankly, some of the others have done, then no, I'm with you. But, yeah, I mean, I'd like to see him again. I think he was a good senator. Pretty simple on that front. Now, the trucker protest. There are reports that there's going to be one here in the U.S. starting, I guess, sometime around the Super Bowl, maybe the Super Bowl, or even the State of the Union. There's part of me that goes, that's just nonsensical messaging. They're just trying to cause chaos and see if they can gin up some anger amongst truckers. Understand the vaccine thing, not an issue, because truck drivers, they're not mandated to get them, because the argument is they're sitting in their cab, they're by themselves, they're working away from everyone else. It is what it is. They're ginning up. They're attempting to gin up this kind of chaos because they want the chaos. They want to bring this administration down. It's not about vaccines. It's not about freedom. It's about making the Biden administration look bad. It's about gumming the system up even more. For all those people who are concerned about supply chains and all that, if you had these truck drivers, slow down, had a convoy like they have up in Canada, things would get worse, and they would get worse quickly. And that's the point. This is what they want. Let's go to the phone lines. Got Alice on line 1. How we doing, Alice?
I'm fine. How are you?
I am good. What's got you?
Well, first off, the Al Franken thing. That was the most ridiculous thing. The woman was doing a skit. That would be like a porn star claiming that she was sexually abused doing a sexual scene. I mean, it's the same principle.
Okay.
I just thought that was ridiculous. He definitely should run again. And then this Freedom Convoy thing, they're just so lucky that I'm not in charge up there in Canada, because I'd call out the Army and tell them, give them 24 hours, and if they don't move, just start running over them with the tanks. It's ridiculous.
Wow, you're harsh.
Well, it's that platygenic gene coming out. It does that once in a while. They all like to kill each other off. So
there you go.
All right, have a nice one.
Thank you, Alice. I appreciate it. I'm not in favor of the military running them down, but I understand the urge. I do. Ultimately, as I've said, I'm in favor of people having the right to protest. And if they want to do that, fine. They just can't booger up can't go blocking bridges, can't go doing the kind of stuff that they're doing. And what's interesting, and remember this moment, the next time a Black Lives Matter protest happens, or any protest for that matter, and something gets blocked up and you hear conservatives losing their minds, remind them of hypocrisy. Remind them of the time that they were in favor of this. I have not been. And look, in this country, I don't know what the countries in the laws in Canada are, but in this country, you can't block the highways with trucks because the third lane is always truck free, and you can't be in both lanes unless you're passing. So they could citation the you-know-what out of people. Now you go, but they wouldn't do that. I don't know. And from what I'm hearing up there, they're doing it there too. So when this works itself out, and it will, going to be interesting to see what happens. Now there are stories of companies who their truck drivers, I guess, stole their trucks, who have gotten involved in this rally. They decided, I'm going to go be involved, and took the company truck with them. And the companies are not happy. In fact, one of the companies, basically said that they were sending a crew out to get this truck, and they were going to drive it back, and they were going to fire the guy who did it. And a lot of the truck drivers are pushing back. And this is what happens. You're getting this reaction from the people who did the right thing. Look, they got vaccinated. They protected themselves. And I'm waiting for that to happen here as well, where the silent majority stop putting up with the temper tantrums. When the silent majority on both sides of the aisle say, enough Marjorie Taylor Greene and her gazpacho, enough of the Matt Gaetz and the Madison Cawthorns, enough of this kind of craziness. We want things to get done. We want people's lives to get better. We want things to work. Just my thought. Love to hear yours. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you miss any of the program, download podcast. You can get that at thericksmithshow.com or any place where you get your podcast. Make sure you share. Also comment. Give us a decent rating. I'd appreciate it. Quick break. Right back after this. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1937. That was the day Sheriff Theodore Middleton and his deputies in Harlan County shot into the house of UMWA organizer Marshall Music, killing his 15-year-old son Bennett. Music organized for the UMWA's District 19. He traveled all over Harlan County. As a district organizer, he was beaten, arrested, and evicted from company housing repeatedly. Some of the mines were organized in Harlan County, but barely. Many coal operators controlled area sheriff's departments and restricted the daily life of miners and their union representatives. Organizing drives started in January of 1937. Union men faced extreme physical violence. Organizers were tear gassed in early January. Their cars were dynamited later that month. Music and his wife were shot at and warned repeatedly to leave town. Another organizer had his door busted down by deputies and his house ransacked. Music finally agreed to leave town to keep his family safe. But on this day, upon arriving in Pineville, he learned his son had been killed in a firestorm of bullets shot into his house. On March 22nd, the La Follette Committee on Civil Liberties opened hearings into Bloody Harlan. It lasted for 6 weeks. The Justice Department indicted 69 Harlan County coal operators and law officers for criminal conspiracy in violation of the Wagner Act. Meanwhile, the new National Labor Relations Board answered the UMWA charges and found in the union's favor. The board issued a cease and desist order against interference with union activity and ordered the reinstatement of 60 coal miners. As a result, union membership soared to 9,000. The UMWA would continue for decades to fight to keep Harlan County organized.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So it's being reported that UPS, the United Parcel Service, that their shares soaring. I've seen it all over the place. Things are great. Things are great. They blew away all of the profit forecasts for the fourth quarter. All the analysts were wrong. They outperformed in those places. It's being reported 2022, going to see healthy profit margins. That's going to continue. In fact, you had UPS's CEO, Carol Tomei, on recently did an interview where she talked about how they're going to pivot. They're going to pivot to their more profitable stuff, maybe lose some of that not so profitable stuff, maximize profits. And she talked about leaning into healthcare and how by leveraging the healthcare logistics and all that stuff, they made $8 billion and how that's going to grow over the next year to $10 billion. And outlook is great. And yet, CEO doing what CEO going to do, fatten the bottom line and slashing wages. This is exactly what I'm hearing is happening at UPS. Because you may remember, and we were touting this all during the busy season last year. UPS isn't struggling getting anybody to come to work like Amazon. UPS isn't having problems like FedEx. They're not having problems like everybody else. Why? Because they're paying decent wages, decent hours, conditions, all of that. Now they want to roll that back. And I was saying at the time, better get it in writing because they're going to do it, and here they are. Well, my Teamster buddies, they're not putting up with it. And the folks in Philadelphia are leading the charge. That's why I've asked Richard Hooker to come talk with us. Richard is the Secretary-Treasurer of Teamsters Local 623 there in Philadelphia, teamsterslocal623.org, their website. Richard, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you for having me, good brother. Thank you.
So am I getting this right? Am I on the right page here where, profits are good, company's not hurting, forecast looks good, not hurting, but opportunism, hey, let's claw this back?
You're absolutely on the right page. That's exactly what's happening right now.
And what's the reasoning? What's the rationale behind this? I mean, if again, I love these frames of, these workers were heroes, patriotic, essential. We gave them such great names and good pats on the back and had them wear T-shirts of, all this stuff. And yet now we're, seeing all of that stuff being rolled back. It's not just UPS. It's just about everywhere. The difference is UPS has got a unionized workforce and they're not putting up with it.
Absolutely. So actually here in Philadelphia, Local 623, the company was complaining about how they were having a hard time keeping people to work because of places like Amazon and FedEx, non-union competition, who were paying more money. UPS starting wage right now is $15. Amazon was starting their workers at $18 an hour. So what UPS wanted to do in last summer was bump up the wages. So they did it, and the members the workers were making $2 and some $4 more than what the contractual mandate was. And as you so eloquently said in the beginning, the CEO came on and said that they outperformed, they did better than expected, even with them raising the wage for all these workers. Now, all of a sudden, they want to take that money back. And of course, the workers, the members are not happy. We plan on fighting for them and with them and standing with them because it's not right. We're heroes. Central and all these adjectives they use to describe us for the last 2 years. We delivered the vaccines. We came in on our days off to help them make more money. And this is the thing right here, Rick. In their historic, history, they've made so much money down through the years, over 100 and some years. This is the most money they have ever made in over 100 years. Just think about that. The most ever made.
Yeah,
and they want to take
Richard,
it away from the people.
Richard, none of this is surprising. I mean, look at the fact that during the pandemic, our billionaire class pocketed a couple extra $1 trillion, while the majority of us fell behind. The wealthy keep getting wealthier, and we in the working class keep falling behind. And which is why I think it's so important in these moments to have people like you and your members step up and say, no way we're going backward. And I don't even know how they can do that to people who are on the payroll now. I could see if they're going, well, future new hires, we'll bring them in at $15 an hour because that's the contract. But we're not going to take the money away from the people who got us through the pandemic. That is a major, major slap in the face. I can see it the one way. I wouldn't like it, and I don't like it, but it is the contract. But when you had these people who worked all through that season in the conditions that they worked in and made you this massive profit, to now turn around afterwards and jab them in the back like this, that's unconscionable.
You're right. And that's why we're planning this big rally on February the 24th, 7:30 a.m. here in Philadelphia at our city building, 15 East Oregon Avenue. We're also getting petitions signed right now. We have over 1,000 signatures. And we're going to be collecting them through the rest of the month leading up to the rally. We're going to show the company that we're just not going to take it. And with our contract expiring next year, we want to send the company a clear message that we're paying attention, the members are paying attention, and if they don't do right by us now, come next year, those profits won't be there because we're going to be walking on the street, and that's what we're prepared to do.
Now, what do you say to the person, Richard? Because I actually had this conversation months ago. Because in our area, they're paying the people at the UPS, the part-timers, to get them in the door. They were paying like $20, $22, $24 an hour to get them in the door. And I was saying, did we get this in writing? I mean, is this something that eventually we would be in this moment? So what do you say to the people who say, well, you didn't get this in writing. What you have in writing is what it is. And that's what it is. And you made your bed, lay in it.
And I get that. And of course, UPS is going to say, well, the contract says this, and they're absolutely right. But I can only speak for here in this local. They are hurting for people in a major way. And their big thing was we have to get the people in the building, because right next to our Oregon Avenue building is Amazon. Amazon is right across the street, paying more than what you're paying. And a lot of the skilled workers that we have were going over to Amazon. So what they decided to do was bump that wage up. But now you got them in the door. Now you want to take it away from them. So what you think is going to happen to those workers? They're going to go right back across the street. So
and that's what should happen, shouldn't it?
Say again?
That's what should happen, isn't it?
Absolutely.
I mean, ultimately, if you're not going to respect people, why would they respect you?
Absolutely. And so what needs to happen is they need to do the right thing here. We understand what the contract says. And the narrative of UPS is going to be the contract say A, B, C, and D. All we're doing with A, B, C, D is telling us to do. They're also going to say, well, our part-timers are the only part-timers in the country who gets paid pensions and health care. Well, that also may be true, but we also earned that money. We earned that money. We earned it. We came in on our days off. We worked through a pandemic, no hazard pay. We had to fight to get paid and do all these things. So we earned that money. But what we didn't earn is the disrespect and the degradation that comes with you taking this money from us while you become more profitable. You give your stockholders more dividend shares, but you take the people that allowed you to do that, you take that from them. That is not correct. That is not fair, and we're going to fight it.
And you should. Let me ask you the other side of this, the legal part of it. Legally, is there any recourse? Because, hey, these people were hired at $19 an hour. And I know a bunch of people, a bunch of part-timers who took these jobs because they were making $19, $20, $22, $24 an hour. And now to turn around and go, oh, hey, by the way, that was only temporary. We're now going to claw that back. Is there any legal recourse to that?
Because of negotiations that happened in 2018, because we actually took this case to panel. And every argument we won except for one argument. And the argument that ultimately decided the case was back in 2018, this situation came up through negotiations about MRAs and, pay bumps and bonuses. And the union actually had a proposal that they were going to give the company that actually talked about what would happen if this situation came up and how it would be handled. But the union in 2018 took that proposal off the table. And where it was explained to me from the panel and from the legal experts is that whenever a union or the company takes something off the table during negotiations, they cannot get it through the grievance procedure. And so what's going to have to happen is next year in negotiations, there's going to have to be a proposal and language that protects our members moving forward from any situation like this from happening again.
Yeah. See, I keep coming back to the fairness part of this. And that's the struggle for me. I keep coming back to what was fair. And this doesn't seem fair to me. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show. We're here with Richard Hooker. Richard is the Secretary-Treasurer of Teamsters Local 623 in Philadelphia. Their website, teamsterslocal623.org. We'll get links out on social media how you can check out the stuff that they're doing and more information about this rally and this push to make sure that these workers don't get cheated. But I'm looking at this, and the fair part of this would be, okay, fine. The people who were working and did this, they should be left where they were. You want to hire new people at the $15 an hour rate. That's your business. You're not getting anybody, and you'll learn that. But you shouldn't harm these people. And I think that's the fairness part. Now, all the contract language stuff that you've laid out, fine, well, and good. But there's fairness. There's common decency, and this does not sound like common decency to me.
It's not, Rick. And the company knows it, but when you're making billions and dollars in profit, you don't care about the people that help you to get there. And UPS doesn't care. They do not care. They have the contract language on their side. Nothing in the contract speaks about fairness. Well, I'll take that back. It does say a fair day's work for a fair day's pay. And if you really look at it, they are violating what that means. These workers came under the premise of $19 and some $17, and now you're taking that from them, and it's not fair. And again, we're going to be fighting this tooth and nail, and we want to send a clear-cut message to United Parcel Service.
Good on you. Good on you, man. For our listeners in Philadelphia, 15 East Oregon Avenue there in Philly. It is on February 24th from 7:30 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. By all means, show up, show your support, or drive by, beep the horns, or email the good folks there at UPS and let it be known that you're not quite happy with what they're doing. Now, here's one of the arguments that I get is this is in defense of the industry. A lot of people are saying UPS is going to probably have a lot of problems in the coming years and months because Amazon's this behemoth monopolizing everything it touches is going to put Amazon out of business. Do you fear that? Do you see that coming? And is this a justification for what they're doing now?
No, I don't see that happening. Amazon is a big behemoth, and I think, and I know what we have to do is organize them. That's number one issue. We have to organize Amazon. That's the main thing. Neither side is going to take the other one out. UPS is not going to take Amazon out, and Amazon is not going to take UPS out. That's just not going to happen because of the work that has been done there. The pandemic has shown that a lot of people are ordering online. They don't even go to the store anymore. It's just e-commerce, and both companies are doing very, very well off this platform, and they've made trillions, billions, gazillions of dollars during this pandemic. So what I see is it's just going to have to take a hard stand from the workers and the unions. It's going to have to push back. We're going to have to push back at Amazon, and we're going to have to push back at United Parcel Service. That's just the main thing. We're going to have to push until we get what the workers demand and deserve. Next year is going to be a big, big year. Our contract expires, and this rally and what we're doing is going to be a foundational experience to let them know this is what could happen next year if they don't do the right thing now.
Yeah, ultimately, it's about mobilizing the base and getting people into the streets. Because look, over these this last year especially, there have been a lot of worker mobilization, a lot of actions going on. So it's kind of the right time for this. And I think, the idea that you have this corporation that has made billions of dollars, as you pointed out, enormous sums of money, better than they've done in past years, and yet now they choose to go, well, we need a little more. That it's never enough, and all of the excuses aside, Amazon aside, the contract aside, it rings wrong, it rings deceitful, it rings in every negative way possible, in my view.
You're right, and that's why we have to do this. It's going to take a something that we put out there to our members about what our plan is this year. We're calling it Weaponizing Solidarity. And this is what we're going to have to do. The company going to have to see not just 623, but all of our Teamster brothers and sisters across the country, because it's affecting them as well. But not only Teamsters, every union possible is going to have to come together and fight these corporations like UPS and Amazon. Our plan is when the big wigs look out the window on February the 24th, they're not just going to see Teamsters Local 623. They're going to see state politicians, city council members, state reps, other unions, the TV and social media experts out there. They're going to see everybody, because for the last 2 years, the workers have kept this country running. It wasn't the Carato Mays or the Jeff Bezos or whoever. It was your everyday worker. The working family, the working mom, the working dad, the community. It was those people who came in, put their life on the line, sacrificed their health, got COVID, came back from COVID, and still made these companies the most profitable they have ever been in their history. And this is what they do. But we got news for them. We're going to stand up, we're going to fight back, and we're going to win.
There you go. Richard Hooker, I appreciate you taking time for us. Remember, on February 24th, if you're in the Philadelphia area, if you're listening in that region, 15 East Oregon Avenue there in Philly, 7:30 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. on February 24th. Show up and, well, help. To me, it is that simple. Appreciate the time, Richard. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Great stuff, as always, our good friend Richard Hooker. Going to take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1854. That was the day that novelist George Leppard died in Philadelphia. Leppard was friends with Edgar Allan Poe. He is most well known for his novel about Philadelphia, titled Quaker City. The book is considered to be one of the first American muckraking novels. Muckrakers write to uncover misconduct or muck in public life. The book cast the city elites in an unflattering light and explored the crooked underbelly of the city. The elites did not much care for the book, but the working class made it the best-selling novel in the country. In 1849, Lepard helped found the Brotherhood of the Union, which later became known as the Brotherhood of America. It was a secret benevolent society, a kind of Freemasons for the working man. The Brotherhood issued badges and medals. They borrowed from names and symbols of the American Revolution. They promoted a shorter workday, education, and election reform. By 1850, the Brotherhood had expanded to 19 states. Lepard was elected Supreme Washington, the highest title for the leadership position of the group. He died a few years later, succumbing to tuberculosis at the age of just 31. But the Brotherhood continued long after his death into the late 20th century. In a book about New York, Lepard once wrote, "Enormous wealth is only enormous crime. Yes, we may phrase it as we will, the immense concentration of wealth in the hands of any one man or in the hands of any corporate power is an evil fraught with more danger to the happiness and liberty of the nation than all the crowned tyrants of the world." Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So all I keep hearing, and here it's gotten worse. You know, the deniers, the anti-maskers, the anti-vaxxers, all of that crowd. They've gotten worse. The emails have gotten worse. It was a hoax. It wasn't a big deal. Just like the flu. You know, all of this narrative that they're trying to package, saying that everything that we've tried to do over the last couple of years to keep people safe, to not allow this to explode, to destroy our healthcare systems, you know, all of that stuff was for naught. It was all a waste of time. It was all a fraud. You'd be amazed at some of the garbage I hear. What we're not hearing is, you know, the people who didn't die from it, but still got it and are still sick. What are we going to do with them? And from what this most recent story that I've come across, it's even worse than I thought it was going to be. We're talking, you know, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people who are going to have to live with this disability for years to come. And again, this is something at the very beginning that I talked about that sure might not kill you, but, you know, long-term problems we're all going to have to pay for. So do the right thing. And sadly, a lot of people didn't. And here to share some thoughts on what this is going to look like down the road as we move out of the pandemic era and back into some bit of normalcy. What's it going to mean for people who are harmed by this? That's why I've asked Mia Ives Ruble to come talk with us. Mia is the director of the Disability Justice Initiative at the Center for American Progress. AmericanProgress.org is their website. Mia, thanks for taking time for us.
Rick, I'm always glad to be on your podcast.
So, you know, here I'm looking at this and I'm going, you know, I'm getting all this email from people going, oh, it's all a hoax, no big deal. It's all overblown. And I'm going, no, I actually know people who've got long COVID, who are having lung issues, who are having problems that, you know, some of them can't even work and someone's going to pick up the tab and that's going to be the rest of us.
Yeah, definitely. You know, as you said earlier, we just released a report showing that 1.2 million more disabled people. So that's on top of the current disability population that is out right now, which is 1 in 4 people have a disability in the United States. We have added 1.2 million more disabled people, and that's based on the Bureau of Labor Statistics. We analyzed that data. One of my amazing colleagues, Rose, was able to look at that data and see that there was the biggest increase from 2000 to 2001 of disabled people in the population today.
And we're still not done with this. It could be more going down the road. In fact, you know, if not for the dreaded Obamacare, this could be a pre-existing condition that down the road insurance companies may not have covered had it not been for the dreaded Obamacare.
100%. You know, one of the things that we have been talking with folks, both on the administration side and on the Hill is just what are the impacts that this is going to have on people long term. You know, we have an estimate of 1.2 million, and that's just based on BLS data. Brookings came out with some statistics that shows that even if they don't sort of meet the requirement for being labeled as disabled by BLS, 31 million people, they estimate 31 million people of working age population may have lingering signs of COVID-19. So that's anything from losing their sense of taste or smell, which can affect appetite issues and cause other issues like mental health issues because, you know, I mean, I don't know about you, but, you know, food makes me happy. And it's a very cultural thing to do for people. And so it can have long standing impacts for people. So what is that going to do to our labor force? As people continuously say, there's a labor shortage, which I would push back and say it's more of a wage shortage and an issue of employers not adapting to the current environments. And what are we going to do in terms of our safety net programs, whether federal or state level?
Yeah, I mean, and given the state of our safety net programs, can we handle this kind of influx of more people with disabilities? I mean, you know, at the end of the road, I think we're doing a pretty crummy job right now. Now add another, you know, large group of people with breathing and lung problems to that. I don't know that we can shoulder that without some major, policy to move in a direction where we can.
Yeah, we have been looking at a lot of different aspects, whether looking at housing to food insecurity to Social Security disability benefits. And we have seen all of these programs, you know, even before the pandemic, they were struggling, but now they're in even worse condition, even with the funds with the American Rescue Plan, which were helpful, but they still didn't exactly target particularly the disability community. And so that, of course, affects people with long COVID. One of the things that we are particularly concerned about, and we've already heard stories in the news and within our communities, but we're likely going to see even more information come out shortly about the inequities and inadequacies of the Social Security Administration. We've seen a continual decline in applications for Social Security, and most people would say, oh, that's great. There's not as many people applying for it. But when we look at the other issues like long wait times to offices being closed, we are actually really concerned that people aren't able to apply for benefits. We've seen from the Office of OMB, we've looked at OMB and seen that they have shown time and time again that people are dying or going into bankruptcy trying to apply for benefits. That has been an issue since the early 2000s and probably even before. So, you know, we are really concerned with the fact that not as many people are applying, even though we're hearing a lot of people with long COVID being denied their applications when they are able to get them through. And so what we're thinking is that once the Social Security Administration opens its local offices, there is going to be a massive flood of applications, and they are just not going to be able to handle it because we know the applications before the pandemic took numerous months to years to being able to establish whether an individual is disabled or not.
No, and this is something that nobody else is really talking about. So I applaud you guys doing this. But in my mind, as you were talking, and I'm hearing all this stuff about the disabilities and how we don't have a safety net for this. My mind keeps going back to what my right wing friends tell me. It's all a hoax. It's all a hoax. Isn't this all a hoax?
I wish it was a hoax. I really do. Unfortunately, having seen so many of people in my community dying, sitting in and hearing about the tragic stories of individuals with long COVID who are literally struggling to get out of bed and be able to do a minimum amount of work to try and provide for their families. All of this is super tragic. And I was just reading a story recently of a woman who had to have her legs amputated because of multi-system failure of her organs. And, you know, like, I wish this was a hoax, but it's not. And I'm angry of so many leaders within communities who are pushing manufactured information, knowing that it's manufactured information and doing it just to get political points, just to get people riled up. And that is extremely tragic and should be criminal.
No, I'm right there with you. If you're just tuning in, you're listening to the Rick Smith Show. We're here with me, my Ives Ruble. She's the director of the Disability Justice Initiative. They're at the Center for American Progress. AmericanProgress.org is their website if you want to check out the work that they're doing. Also, this most recent story that they've got out on how COVID-19 has likely resulted in 1.2 million more disabled people by the end of last year, and workplaces and policymakers need to adapt. So the question is, how are workplaces going to adapt to this as we have more people with disabilities, especially in a time where we're told there aren't enough workers to go around? How do you see that playing out?
Yeah, you know, I know a lot of people have seen the news around Build Back Better, that act and that huge package. And many of the things within that package would actually address a lot of the inequities and issues within the system. So we're looking at issues around paid sick and caregiving leave, right? We know millions of people are out sick because of COVID or out sick because they're caring for somebody with COVID. So getting paid sick leave is simply fundamental, and it's happening in a lot of other countries. I don't understand why it's not happening in the United States. Also looking at mandating masks and vaccinations. That's really, really important. You know, we got rid of polio because of that. You know, we've gotten rid of the mumps because of that. Vaccines work. Yeah. We know that vaccines help keep people out of the hospitals. We know that masks are extremely effective, particularly when both parties are wearing them. So these are really important pieces. Increasing the minimum wage and getting rid of 14C, which is an exemption to pay disabled people sub-minimum wages. These are all extremely important things, many of them which were in Build Back Better. Bill, you know, I don't care what that bill is called. What I do care is that we get the services and the supports and the resources out to the American public. They are in dire need. And I think it's important for people to understand that this isn't about winning political points. It's about helping people's lives on a fundamental level.
I am right there with you. It's about making people's lives better. But here's the question I have, because you talked about masks and you talked about vaccines, and yet all I keep hearing from the right is how masks don't work, and now they claim the data is all in. They don't work. It's a waste of time, and I'm never wearing one. And you've got a whole country in turmoil just to the north of us over the vaccine mandates. I'll tell you, I'm at a point right now where I almost don't care if someone gets vaccinated, simply because what the data is showing us is the people who are dying are the unvaccinated. You roll the dice, you want to play the game, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. I'm ready to be done with people.
I just want to push back on that feeling. I understand it. I totally understand it. The problem is that it affects so many people who are immunocompromised and high risk. So people, including me, who could get really bad effects. I get pneumonia just from common flu and colds. So I think it's important. I know people are tired. I know people are angry at folks who aren't getting vaccination or getting vaccinated. But I think it's really important to understand that, unfortunately, we're all in this together, and we are either going to sink or swim together.
No, I'm with you, but you have to understand, I'm in this spot where I've got to come to the reality that there are just some people who, no matter what, they will burn the house down. And we're seeing it in Canada, the nice people to our north. They're willing to burn the place to the ground because they're not getting their way. And I don't know how you deal with it, because we're not, in this country, we're not going to hold people down and jab them. That's not going to happen. If they don't want to help themselves, I don't know what you do. If if they don't care about themselves, they certainly don't care about you or me.
Yeah, I mean, it's really unfortunate on the stances they take, and I think my continued position is to try to continue to win on the information level, continue to try and provide as many resources as possible, and reduce as many deaths and sickness as possible.
I'm with you, and there's part of me that goes, maybe if we just drop this for a bit, that people will then go, oh, it's not a mandate. Maybe I should take care of myself. Maybe it's not a bad idea to go get vaccinated, and maybe if we get away from the heated charge of the moment, that people will then think a little bit clearer. Because now it's simply coming down to, who'd you vote for in the last election on a lot of this. That's crazy.
I really do wish it wasn't politicized so much. I really do, because it's all of the lives at stake, and I just hope that people understand that I'm not here for political win or anything like that. I just want to keep people safe, and I want to make sure that they stay healthy.
No, and absolutely. But again, I want to highlight this point since you brought it up. I hear from my friends on the right that the only people who died during the pandemic were people who had comorbidities. That, the children who are dying of COVID, they didn't really die from COVID. They were sick anyway. So basically what they're saying is, Mia, if you get it and you die, well, hey, it was something else. It wasn't that.
Yeah, and that makes me super angry, and it diminishes the lives that matter. And I would say that a good majority of people actually have comorbidities. So I think that people don't understand how many individuals have comorbidities, whether you're taking medicine for cholesterol, or if you're taking medicine for cardiac issues, if you have lung issues, if you have black lung, etc. Yep. Any of these things that all people get, whether on the left or the right,
exactly.
We're all affected by it. And so there are loved ones, there are us, there are people that we really care about in our communities. I think that's what people really need to understand, is that it's not a left or a right thing.
And that's where we're going to leave this. Mia, I appreciate you taking time for us. Great stuff. Keep up the great work. I look forward to talking to you again.
Thank you so much.
Good stuff. Mia Ives Ruble. She is the director of Disability Justice Initiative there at the Center for American Progress, AmericanProgress.org, the website there. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Is it all a hoax? Are we concerned about the number of folks with disabilities? I know I am. But thanks so much for tuning in. If you missed any of today's program, make sure you get the podcast. And while you're there, leave a comment, maybe give us that 5-star rating, all of that stuff. Also, you can, did I mention downloading the podcast and taking that with you? Kind of an important thing, kind of something we're pushing along these days. So I just want to make sure it's there. Also, you can follow us on social media, on Twitter at Rick Smith Show, Facebook, YouTube, subscribe, like, share, comment, all of that stuff. Thanks for tuning in to The Rick Smith Show. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at Rick Smith Show, like us on Facebook, Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can find all that and much more at thericksmithshow.com.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
In this horrible time of economic collapse, it is truly touching to see so many corporate chieftains reaching out in solidarity with a hard-hit working class. We know they're doing this because they keep telling us they are. Practically every brand-name giant has been spending millions of dollars on PR campaigns in recent weeks, asserting that they're standing with us, declaring over and over, we're all in this together. Except, of course, they're really not standing anywhere near us. While we're waiting in endless lines at food banks and unemployment offices, the elites are still getting fat paychecks and platinum-level health care. The severity and gross disparity of our country's present economic collapse is not simply caused by a sudden viral outbreak, but by a decades-long plutocratic policy of intentionally maximizing profits for the rich and minimizing everyone else's well-being. As the eminent economist Joseph Stiglitz rightly put it, we built an economy with no shock absorbers. Jobs, once the measure of a family's economic security, have steadily been shriveled to low-wage, unreliable work, untethered to a fair share or any share of the new wealth that workers create. In a relentless push for exorbitant short-term profits, today's executives have abandoned any pretense that a corporation is a community of interdependent interests striving to advance the common good. Instead, while the honchos are richly covered, they're washing their hands of any responsibility for the health, retirement, and other essential needs of their workforce. Rely on food stamps and other publicly funded programs, they say, even as their lobbyists and for-sale lawmakers slash the public safety net. This is Jim Hightower saying these forces of American greed have shoved millions of working families to the economic precipice, and all it takes is a virus to push them over.
Hightower's commentaries are brought to you by the Hightower Lowdown, the monthly newsletter with Hightower's take on what Wall Street and Washington are up to.